Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and you guys relax. No need to help. I'm already into the groove.
Okay, that's good. That's where we want to be for this episode of our season on the films of 1985. We're here at my pick, and it is Desperately Seeking Susan, starring Madonna and her song Into the Groove in her essentially screen debut alongside Rosanna Arquette and Aidan Quinn, directed by Susan Seidelman in her kind of mainstream debut following her early indie film Smithereens. And a big hit, this movie, but possibly not a big hit with my fellow Awesome Movie Year folks here.
Oh, well, Josh, it's not 1985 anymore, so deal with it, buddy.
Okay, it's true. It's not 1985 anymore. But this was a very popular movie in 1985. Of course, Madonna herself was, riding high in terms of her popularity as a singer. And it made sense that she would make this shift into movies and that a film studio would want to capitalize on that. And that worked out quite well for this film. It grossed $27.3 million on its budget of $5 million. It also got some awards attention. It actually won a BAFTA for Best Supporting Actress for Rosanna Arquette.
Who's the lead if she's the supporting actress?
Right.
Weird.
Yeah, that is weird. And the only thing I can think of is it's like sometimes films will decide that it's an ensemble, so everyone is a supporting actor. But no, she's
in every scene of this film, pretty much. Like, I mean, she's the lead of the whole movie, not just the lead actress. She's the lead, player.
Right. Yeah, the whole story is driven by her character. Yeah, she's in virtually all the scenes. And so weirdly, she was also nominated for the Golden Globe for lead actress, for best actress in a musical or comedy, although didn't win there. And Jason, you mentioned Into the Groove, the Madonna song that is featured here was also a huge hit. It was her first #1 single in the UK. It was released in the US as a B-side, but was still at the top of the Billboard dance charts. So kind of a pop culture moment, this movie, I think. Into the Groove. Even if you don't like
Into the Groove is it's as the kids might have said a year ago, a bop, but if you ever look at the lyrics, they're so mundane and basic. And like, it's fun when you my daughter likes all these K-pop bands now. And I'm like, dude, these are terrible lyrics. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second. Never mind. So.
Yeah. A lot of Madonna early songs are, just like, let's have fun. Yeah. Fun is great.
I like to dance. Dancing is cool. Find a
Lucky
partner.
Star.
Yeah.
Holiday, what is Holiday is about? Like, let's go on vacation. That would be fun.
You know where they should go?
They're great songs.
La Isla Bonita.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like La Isla Bonita has more sophisticated lyrics comparatively. But I mean, that's where she was, I think, early at this point. She came out of these New York City dance clubs, and a lot of these songs were popularized also as like dance remixes where the lyrics are even less important. They're just kind of like part of the wallpaper or whatever. And, it was only later on that she started when she got more provocative and her songs reflected that, I think. But this song is great. It's a bop.
Danceteria was the kind of new wave dance club that she was always hanging around at and is used in this film for a couple of scenes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of also, I mean, even though this is a sort of sanitized Hollywood version, especially compared to Smithereens, Susan Seidelman's first film, there is a lot of that authentic kind of New York underground scene stuff here. The cast is full of these like New York art world and punk world scenesters in small parts. I mean, it's a long list. The ones that like I noticed were Rocket's Red Glare, who I remember watching a whole documentary about him years ago, and he plays a cab driver who gets mad at Madonna for not paying him.
And Josh, we talked about him in Trees Lounge, another film that uses all these like New York type of artists and performers.
There you go. Yeah, I didn't even remember that. But yeah, he's kind of a scenester there. Annie Golden, who plays a singer and was later on Orange is the New Black. Richard Hell, who's a punk singer. John Lurie, an artist known for like Painting with John later on, the HBO show. And my favorite is the Three Identical Strangers who show
that was fun to see.
Do a double
take. Yeah, because so going through that list, so Three Identical Strangers, amazing film. You guys, if you've not watched that documentary, you should watch it. John Lurie, first of all, Painting with John is amazing. Dave, you should definitely watch that show. And
I feel like I've seen it before. I remember it, and yeah, it's really cool.
I think he had like a spin-off, Fishing with John or Traveling with John.
Yeah, I think it was Fishing.
But John Lurie, dude, I mean, this is a blueprint here. John Lurie's in those early Jim Jarmusch movies, and I feel like, having watched Smithereens and then this, I feel like Susan Seidelman is just like, hey, what did Jim Jarmusch do? I'll do that a year and a half later, you know? So that's how I feel about it, Josh. You can't force me not to. And
I'm not playing.
Don't force me, Josh.
Okay.
Carol Leifer is a great comedian. She's in it too.
Yeah. I mean, there were tons. I mean, just looking on like Wikipedia, a number of them who I had not heard of. So I was just kind of picking out some that I was familiar with.
Wasn't Richard Hell? I mean, he was one of the stars of Smithereens. He had a bit of a bigger part in this, didn't he?
Yeah. Who does he play in this one? I think he has a still a relatively small part in here versus what he does in Smithereens.
Well, I'll just tell everyone, Richard Hell helped define this era of New York City, which we've talked about before, and the art era of the Blank Generation. Great song, Richard Hell and the Voidoids, the Blank Generation, that kind of summarizes everything.
And he plays like the partner in crime of Will Patton's character, the main like thief guy who's trying to track down Susan. So not a big part, I think.
All right. Well, still a great song.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. But what I was going to say about your Jim Jarmusch comparison is that I don't know that Jim Jarmusch ever made like as mainstream or Hollywood friendly a movie as this. And that's not a criticism of Jim Jarmusch, but I just think that maybe what Susan Seidelman is doing is certainly influenced by Jarmusch, but not necessarily just copying, but maybe taking some of that template and putting this more like mainstream pop music gloss on it.
You don't think Down by Law is a big Hollywood movie?
I haven't seen that one, but I'm guessing it's not.
No, your assessment is right. I just felt all types of Jarmuschian vibes in this thing.
And that's fair. Yeah. I mean, and certainly in Smithereens more so. Although I feel like the characters, maybe it's just the Jarmusch movies I like are the sort of gentler ones, but I feel like the characters in Smithereens are a bit more abrasive than you might expect from a Jarmusch.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I said, it's like a year behind, right? So it's like Permanent Vacation kind of probably leads into this, and then Permanent Vacation leads into Smithereens, and Stranger Than Paradise leads into Desperately Seeking Susan.
Yeah, but I mean, I think she has her own spin on this. It's not just a copy. So this was mostly also well reviewed by critics, although it was a split decision from Siskel and Ebert. It got a thumbs up from Ebert and a thumbs down from Siskel, who was he wasn't super negative, but he was too exasperated with the plotting. Although it's amusing to watch their segment, and as Siskel is recounting the kind of convoluted, let's say, plot of this film in his frustrated way, Ebert is laughing the whole time because he finds it amusing, and then later he says he was chortling, which is always a great word.
Was he guffawing?
He was correctly identifying it as chortling. Guffawing, I feel like, is
a little more,
a bit louder. Yeah. So so they were split on this, but in his written review, Roger Ebert said, Desperately Seeking Susan is a screwball comedy based on several cases of mistaken identity. The plot isn't the point, anyway. Once you realize the movie is going to be a series of double reverses, you relax and let them happen. What I liked in Desperately Seeking Susan was the cheerful way it bopped around New York, introducing us to unforgettable characters played by good actors. Desperately Seeking Susan does not move with the self-confidence that its complicated plot requires, but it has its moments, and many of them involve the different kinds of special appeal that Rosanna Arquette and Madonna are able to generate. They are very particular individuals, and in a dizzying plot, they somehow succeed in creating specific, interesting characters.
Well, that was clearly written by his evil twin Biebert, because I just don't agree right there. When you say the plot is not the point, yes, we all like movies that don't have to be plot heavy, but the plots have to like make sense and not, just kind of meander along for the sake of it. So to me, that aspect kind of took me out of it.
Yeah, I mean, the plot definitely is ridiculous. And I mean, I think the comparison to a 30s like screwball comedy is fair. And one thing also that Siskel says in that segment is that it's too long and it's not fast paced enough quite to really capture that sense. And I think that that's true, that this movie could have been tightened up a bit. And another thing with those ridiculous plots is that the faster it moves along, the less time you have to think, what? Why is this happening? What's going on? And I think there's maybe too much of that. On the other hand, I understood the plot. I mean, parts of it might have been like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. But I understood what was happening.
Yes, I don't. Did someone not understand?
Well, I don't. Well, I think maybe
was it you, Dave?
I was very confused as to what was the goal. Like, I don't know. Like, I understood the basic bits of it, but what was going forward, that definitely threw me off. But no, that wasn't the problem with the movie, though. I think what you said, Josh, is the problem with the movie, and that's the pacing of it. Like, it's just like, okay, we're just going on and on and on about kind of nothing for so long.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't bother me that much, but I definitely felt like and I've seen this movie before, but when I went to watch it again and I saw the running time, I was like, oh yeah, that's probably longer than it should be. Yeah. And it is. But I mean, if this was 10 minutes shorter or something like that, I think it would have made a big difference.
Yeah.
And I don't mind the plot, like Ebert says, that, yeah, it's stupid. I mean, Rosanna Arquette's character gets like movie amnesia where she bumps.
Yeah, but that's okay. We've seen that a billion times, right?
Right. And I'm fine with that. I think you can go with that. Like, obviously, no, that's not how amnesia really works. And that's not how any of this would really happen. But I'm fine with going with that because this is a ridiculous, silly, heightened kind of story. And I just think, yeah, there are moments that drag. But also, I love the vibe, the environment. And I did really think the characters were entertaining. So I still do enjoy this film. And I guess you guys.
Well, I love the environment too. Obviously, New York 80s, this type of music, I love that stuff. I just think there is a more effective way to go about it. To Dave's point about the pacing, Madonna disappears for long periods of the film, right? So if that's the case, and we know she ends up in jail at some point, wouldn't it have, I think it could have been a more interesting movie if, the Rosanna Arquette character, who's clearly obsessed, and is living vicariously through Susan, just is like, oh, well, Susan's not here, I'll be Susan, right? And then that gives them a chance to kind of track her down in a more natural way without all the bumps in the head and, the mistaken identity with a little more kind of impetus behind it, I think might have worked better for it.
I guess. But I mean, I think part of the point is that she's too timid to really like fully commit to that. And the amnesia thing, as ridiculous as it is a way to put her in that position where, it breaks her out of that suburban life that she has and forces her to live this different life that maybe she wouldn't have actually gone for on her own.
Yeah, but we've seen that again a million times. Look at Nurse Betty or something like that, where it's like the suburban lifestyle is not doing it for me, and I've always kind of just lived a safe life. And then whatever the incident is, and here it's the head bump, takes them to give something else a shot.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're saying we've seen it before, and then citing a movie that came out like 15 years
I'm just saying, you're saying this character is timid. There are other examples throughout film history of timid characters taking that big shot without needing the amnesia.
I guess, but I felt like that made sense for the character, that she needed that kind of push. And like, I don't think what you're saying would necessarily make the movie better.
Well, I do.
Obviously you do.
I don't think we need the amnesia. I think we could have just gone with I'm taking her identity.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, again, in a weird way too, then that like the amnesia absolves her of having done something like underhanded, right? Because she didn't steal Susan's identity. She really thought she was Susan because she didn't know better because she had amnesia. And so she's more innocent, and the arc of her character development is more kind of
yeah, that's fair considering, like you mentioned, Smithereens, where you just want to punch every character in the face, especially the lead for being such an a-hole.
Right.
So
yeah, and that is absolutely true here. And I think we're aiming, because again, this
the
is
mainstream
a mainstream
movie,
Hollywood movie. Yeah, we're aiming for the people to be more likable. Even Susan, who everyone says, she's kind of a selfish train wreck, she's certainly not unlikable in the way that the Smithereens
Ren.
lead.
Yeah, she's the Hollywoodized version of Ren, right?
Exactly. And I prefer the Hollywoodized version, definitely. So Kirk Ellis in The Hollywood Reporter said, "Desperately Seeking Susan could well usher in a whole new subgenre, new wave screwball comedy. Its chief and possibly substantial box office interest deriving from the acting debut of the pulchritudinous pop siren Madonna. This Orion release takes nearly half its length to find its madcap comic center. But an attractive, energetic young cast and some witty off-center visual humor make the resultant laughs more than worth the wait. Delicious in their sense of the role reversal wish fulfillment, these latter scenes likewise show off a bright, engaging ensemble of performers. Susan Seidelman allows them all to shine. When she brings this motley crew together for the film's lively nightclub finale, the ensuing chaos recalls one of the great Marx Brothers destruction derbies."
The Marx Brothers, who we've all described as pulchritudinous.
Yeah, pulchritudinous, quite meaning attractive.
Yeah. The idea that the subgenre is new wave screwball would lead to say that there's an entire new wave genre of film. Like a New York slash British new wave music genre of film, which never happened. I think the subgenre could just be new wave movies in general.
Right. Well, I mean, again, in 1985, I think the new wave music was just kind of coming up. And so to think that that might have influenced films, and it did, but, like you say, it didn't really create a whole genre or subgenre. But to imagine that it could have, I think makes sense, especially when you watch this movie, which again became a big hit, starred one of the biggest pop stars in the world at the time. You could see it being the first instance of something like that, even though it maybe didn't really turn out.
Yeah. Also, I don't think anyone, and this is not a knock, I just think it's an incorrect assessment. No one considers Madonna a new wave artist. I know what they're saying with the early music, but she's a queen of pop right there. And these were pop songs with kind of synth. I get it, new wavy things, but I've never heard her referred to as new wave.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, it's interesting, although to me, like how people characterize this music at the time, because a lot of the things that I read reference, and like in the Siskel and Ebert segment, reference Madonna as a rock star, which I feel like is not how we would describe someone like that now. So the separation maybe was not as clear at the time. But you're right, new wave music, which we think of as more kind of like guitar-driven bands with synths or whatever, is not what Madonna really is. But it's all part of that scene that we're immersed in this movie, I think, where it's, punk kind of transitioning into new wave with those pop influences. I feel like it's all in the same area.
Yeah, I mean, I love that music. I've covered so many of those bands live as, when I was writing about music. And, probably one of my favorite memories of this film is when they meet at Danceteria and they play Into the Groove. Like, you really feel that and that vibe. And like that song still, like, you can still get that high off of it. It's dance music, it's dance pop, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's great. And that scene is also good. I liked that, Susan Seidelman clearly wanted to capture the range of the kind of people that actually would go to that place. And I like that there's, people in drag just kind of in the background. And I feel like another movie would make some big deal out of it. Or, the clueless character, Rosanna Arquette's husband, who's the bumbling suburban business guy, would show up and he would, have some awkward interaction with a drag queen, be like, oh my gosh, who is this man who looks like a lady? But we don't have any of that. And it's just like, here's the scene, and it's very matter of fact. And I like that.
Good.
Thank you. So finally, Kevin Thomas in the Los Angeles Times said, Leora Barish's blithe, wryly satirical script liberates Susan Seidelman, allowing her to combine the streetwise grit of Smithereens with a glorious cockamamie sense of humor. Desperately Seeking Susan couldn't be more right now. And in being so and being itself, it's actually lots closer to the spirit of hallowed 30s screwball comedies than films nakedly striving to emulate them. Everything about it is fresh. Its wit, its people, its sound, and its look. Seidelman and Barish have affection for all their people, including those in smaller roles impeccably played by well-known denizens of New York's underground scene. Desperately Seeking Susan is a lark, an exhilarating celebration of people who have the good sense to be in touch with themselves and with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, certain movies 40 years later still feel fresh, and certain movies feel like timepieces, because I'm not getting that kind of excitement from it. So, I mean, maybe it was like, here's a weird comparison, right? What if you showed Garden State to someone who's in Gen Z today, right? Like Garden State in 2004 or whatever, that was such like a movie of our generation and for that generation of young hipsters. And I think if you watched it today, people would be like, what? Like, why is this guy such a whiny little, and then
some people said that at the time.
Right. And then the Manic Pixie Dream Girl and this and that. But it's still, the overwhelming sentiment was, this is the film of this generation right now. And I feel like that might have been what was these reviews are leading me to believe about Desperately Seeking Susan 20 years before.
Yeah, I mean, this is certainly less self-important than Garden State. And I mean, I wonder that, like, I was a Garden State supporter at the time, but I feel like if I watched it now, I don't know that I would be necessarily. But yeah, I think this movie is something where maybe, weirdly, I feel like if you watch this movie in like the 90s, you might be like, ugh, it's so dated. But now, looking at it, is that time capsule that's charming, I think. Like, maybe it's not as fresh as these people are describing. And like you're saying, some of these plot elements or whatever have been overused since then. But I think it's a really nice snapshot of the time and place, the scene in New York and, the pop culture moment and all that. And I like that about it.
Good.
All right. Thank you for your support.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah. All right. So Jason, had you seen this movie?
No, but it was always on my list and my favorite moment in the movie is because of a personal connection. My grandfather, we've talked about, Van Harris, was a comedian for 66 years. And I grew up around all these kind of entertainer types. And the ventriloquist here is played by Stanley Burns, who was, I saw, I couldn't tell you how many times throughout my childhood. He was at my grandfather's house in the Catskills a lot because they both performed up there. And I remember sitting on Stanley's lap and in the other, leg was a dummy, one of his big dummies. And Stanley Burns used to call me his very best friend. So it was great to see Stanley, and made me want to watch Radio Days, the Woody Allen movie, which I know he was in a couple years after.
Oh, nice. Have you not seen Radio Days? That's great.
No, but I'll watch it.
Yeah. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember thinking that it was,
talking about those New York characters, he really looks like a New York character and everything. So it was just a pleasure to see him get that screen time.
Yeah, I didn't even know that about, him. And I think that speaks to like almost everyone in this movie. And there's, character actors like John Turturro shows up as the terrible comedian who hosts the variety acts at the club, and Giancarlo Esposito as like some street vendor, and, all these people who are probably, as we've talked about, like theater actors or whatever. And they just got picked up for these small parts in this movie and, later went on to bigger things. So it's cool to see them. I had seen this. I watched it not that long ago, probably only like a year or two ago, and enjoyed it. I don't love this movie. I feel like a lot of your criticisms, yours and Dave's, are fair, especially about the pacing of this film. But I do really enjoy the vibe of it. I think it's really charming. I love Madonna as a performer and a musician. She's not a great actor, but I feel like this is one of her best acting moments. And so, yeah, so I find it fun, and I thought it would be more enjoyable than I guess it was.
It's okay. I mean, hey, man, let's, not everything's going to work for everyone, but I do want you to tell the story of the last time you saw Madonna at the Coliseum. Didn't you have to wait like 4 hours for her to come on stage or something like that?
It wasn't 4 hours. Yeah, this was on her. Well, I guess not her most recent tour. I didn't see that. Her most recent tour, she did like a greatest hits tour, but that was on the Madam X tour, and that was like the fourth time that I'd seen her. And so I knew that like before that greatest hits tour recently, she, unlike a lot of really, really big stars, was very dedicated to performing all her new songs and a very small number of older songs. And so I think, had read that on that tour, she was showing up really late. So I arrived with the understanding that the show would probably start. It was probably like 2 hours late. I think it was supposed to start at 10 and it started at midnight, and that she would play almost none of her hits. But no one else there seemed to know that. And people were really mad and really rowdy leading up to the beginning of the show. Also, for some reason, the opening act came on, and then there was like an hour in between them and when she went on even. And so by the time she went on, people were not happy. And then she plays all these songs that obviously no one has heard, and they're screaming at her. And I don't remember exactly. I'd have to look up my review that I wrote, but she was like belligerent right back to the crowd. It was fantastic. Like, it was a great show. I don't even like that album that much, but she put so much effort into the production of everything. And that was the case at every show that I saw of hers, whether it was for an album I liked more or less. And so I had a wonderful time, but a lot of people did not. People walked out. It was a rowdy event. Certainly.
When you say she was belligerent back, like what was she doing?
Again, I'd have to look up exactly what she said, but things like, hey, if you don't want to be here, you can leave, and things like that. Because people are like yelling about, and it's in the Coliseum, so it's a smaller venue than she usually plays. It would be
an amazing place to see her.
Yeah, it was. And I was lucky enough to have a pretty close seat because I was there to write about it. And I don't remember, but it was things like that, telling people, or, I'm going to play what I want to play, or, a diva. I think she said something when people were yelling about her being late. She said something like, a diva is never late. The idea that, whatever time she shows up, that's the time that things start. But she was so late on that tour that people in like New York, I think it was, sued her for like false advertising for being later than the time that the show was supposed to start.
We've all seen so many concerts. I mean, I think usually 45 minutes is like, you give that kind of leeway. The longest I ever saw, Lauryn Hill came out 90 minutes late. And Lauryn Hill's one of those artists, there's no in between. She's either amazing or she just isn't involved with the show. And it's either a 5-star or a 1-star show. I caught her on a 5-star show, so like it was like all is forgiven right away because she was so good. But I don't know why you need to come out 2 hours late. I mean, that's beyond diva behavior.
No, I agree. And I wasn't like happy that she was that late. I was happy that I had done my research and knew that she was that late on all the other shows, so that I didn't expect her to show up earlier. But I also remember it was one of those shows where you had to give up your cell phones. And so
everyone's sitting there without cell phones
and didn't know what time it was because nobody wears a watch anymore, like a regular watch, not a smartwatch, but I do. And so like people around me kept asking me what time it was because I was the only person who knew what time it was. It was ridiculous. So, Dave, have you seen this movie? Did you ever see Madonna in concert?
Neither. And I would love to see her in concert. And I always wanted to watch this movie, but I never got around to it. I was very mistaken about what this movie was. I was expecting it to be like a buddy comedy between the two of them based on the poster. And I was really kind of like not expecting the movie that we got.
I agree with Dave. You look at that poster and you're like, oh, this is going to be a wacky punk send up with these two ladies.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the poster is obviously not the movie's fault, but I do agree in a way that like it would have been nice to get some moments of interaction between them. And, we see them at the very, very end. They they team up, they're awarded for, getting the bad guys or whatever, but you don't know what exactly their interaction was. Maybe, I don't know if there was ever talk of a sequel, but, maybe if they had made Desperately Seeking Susan again or something, they could have teamed up to foil some new robbery. That would have been terrible, I think. Probably.
Well, maybe,
but you could have gotten their team.
Maybe not a sequel, but there was an alternate ending where the two of them end up in Egypt together, which could have led to the sequel of like Desperately Seeking Ishtar.
Yeah, that's perfect. If there's one movie you want to emulate, it's Ishtar. So anything else you want to say about the background of this movie, Jason?
I mean, we covered a lot already, but I did think it was interesting that they say this is the first yuppie movie. I'd have to go back and like really do a little more research on that, because the yuppie stuff is like really secondary here. And then I also think the other thing that I really like about this movie is how it kind of helped explode that 80s fashion sense.
Yeah, the fashion here is great, is another element of this movie that was very fresh at the time, and I think is a cool time capsule. But as far as the yuppie thing, that seems weird to me, because I always thought like yuppie was supposed to be young, urban professional. And no one, like the professionals, like Roberta and her husband, they live way out in the suburbs in New Jersey. And none of the characters who live in the city are anything that you would remotely look at as a yuppie.
Think
I think of a yuppie as
Wall
like
Street.
Patrick Bateman, from American Psycho.
And Wall Street for me,
Yeah, exactly. And there's nobody like that in this movie. So that is a weird designation. So we'll come back then and talk some more general thoughts on Desperately Seeking Susan. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1985, we are talking about my pick, Desperately Seeking Susan, which didn't really do it for either.
I was underwhelmed with it. I think, like we said, structurally, I had issues with it. I think my biggest thing is within the next year, 2 better versions of this movie were released, right? I think Rosanna Arquette, plays a much more interesting character in a much more interesting New York movie, After Hours, which I know you're not a fan of, but you're the only one.
I like it fine, but I like this a little more.
And probably the best of the 3 that I'm, between After Hours, Desperately Seeking Susan, is 1986 Jonathan Demme, Something Wild, which I really think captures a unique New York vibe and shows you that kind of character of like live for the day, live for the moment. Melanie Griffith, really one of her best roles, playing against Jeff Daniels. That movie's awesome, and really I think does some unique stuff with how it looks at it. Also, the bad guy here, which is basically just a dude chasing who has no personality. Like you're looking and you're like, hey, look at what they did with Ray Liotta and Something Wild, right? I just think there are better executions in the similar vein that took place almost immediately after this.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm lukewarm on After Hours. I feel like, to me, as much as there's contrivances in this movie, I was fine with all of those. Whereas in After Hours, it got to a point where I was like, this guy is so dumb and is doing the worst possible thing at every moment that I'm not on board with him anymore. And there's still all these amusing side characters, and its portrait of New York is cool too. But I didn't feel exasperated in that same way with this movie, with Rosanna.
Well, I would think if you would feel that way about anyone, it would be the Madonna character in this one with Susan. She makes a lot of bad decisions and stupid decisions.
Yeah, but first of all, she's not the main character. So, those decisions are like, we have to deal with the consequences on our main character.
Right. She's the driver of the story, though.
Yeah, but she's also she's doing exactly what she wants. I think the thing in After Hours is the main character has, not that we're talking about an After Hours episode here, but, he has a goal that he's trying to achieve, and he constantly undermines his ability to achieve it by doing the stupidest possible thing. Whereas Susan is just like going with the flow and doing whatever because that's her character. And the choices that she makes in the process of that screw up other people's lives. So I didn't find her frustrating. She's meant to frustrate the other characters. And I thought that
I think you could, the way you just described that is a fair comparison to the Melanie Griffith character, who is the main character in Something Wild, but who's making all these selfish decisions and not always or not often telling people the full truth of what's going on to get ahead at all times.
Right. And I mean, I think the difference, and I like Something Wild a lot too, although most of that takes place outside New York. Which I remember being surprised by.
Act 1 really sets a tone in New York, and then it becomes a road trip movie for sure.
Yeah, which is still good. But I think the difference there, what you're saying about Melanie Griffith's character, is because she's the main character, she goes on a kind of an emotional journey, her and Jeff Daniels together, where she learns something about herself, he learns something about himself, and that's what allows them to be together. Whereas here, we don't want or need Susan to have an emotional arc. She's just kind of a chaos agent. And in a way, that's maybe why this isn't a buddy comedy, because she would have had to be a different kind of character for it to work that way. The emotional core, the emotional arc here is Roberta, who does change and understand more about herself and, get to be in a better place by the time the movie ends.
Yeah, I like Rosanna Arquette, and what a year for her, 85. I like her way better in After Hours.
Did you not like her here?
I didn't dislike her. I just felt like the character is a little flat. It is a little flat. It's just kind of a two-dimensional character, right? She's pent up housewife, and then she's okay, I guess I am Susan. Like none of either version of her has real layers to it, I didn't think.
I mean, I think you integrate the versions when she bumps her head again, which of course cures amnesia, as we all know, and she understands everything that she's done. I think that's where the layers come in, and that's where the development comes in, and she's able to say with that full knowledge to her shitty husband, "I'm not going back with you," and no, it's not like deep necessarily. This kind of movie isn't, but it works for me, I think.
No, I don't need it to be deep. I just wanted dimensions to it. And the perfect example of that is we've talked about so many movies where women are underwritten. Every man in this is totally underwritten. I think even the two love interests beyond the husband, who's just he's only there to be like a rich guy who doesn't pay attention to his wife and have any. I like Stephen Wright. It was fun seeing Stephen Wright in there, but I thought, I didn't think Aidan Quinn had much to work with. I didn't think any of the men, I think they were all just kind of afterthoughts here.
I mean, I think that's fine for most of those characters. I don't think the husband needs to be more than like self-centered business guy who neglects his wife, and Stephen Wright being just like weird tag-along guy. I do think Aidan Quinn had some level of an arc as well, as he also falls in love with Roberta and trying to understand who she is, but he's not the main character. So I think that's okay. I don't think he was necessarily underwritten. Also, I think it's fine to have a movie where the female characters are well-rounded and the male characters.
I would rather all the characters be well-rounded and have a little more to add to the whole thing.
I thought there were enough well-rounded characters at the center of the story that I was happy to go along with it. So I will agree with you, though, on the plot about the bad guy. Will Patton's character he's nothing. He's not menacing like Ray Liotta in Something Wild, although I didn't want it to suddenly turn like super dark. Like one thing about Something Wild is you think it's like this kind of like crazy journey, and then all of a sudden it is really dark. And I didn't think that would work for this movie. I could have just done without it. It made me think of like, I feel like for some reason, every like 80s mainstream comedy had to have a crime subplot. I'm thinking about like Three Men and a Baby when we covered that. And you think, oh, right, this is a movie about three like clueless dudes having to raise a baby, but it's also about drug smuggling. Why?
I agree. I mean, that would take a whole reconstruction, because Susan is obviously involved in all types of unsavory activities throughout. So
right.
That would be, you'd really have to recraft the whole idea of it then.
No, that's true. I mean, and the presence of that guy is really just to create the sort of heightened circumstances that give Roberta amnesia in the first place, or that require her to hide away, require Susan to get in jail, like all those things. It moves the plot along, or it gets the characters in the positions that the filmmakers want them to be in, but it doesn't work on its own.
I also just felt like I didn't get an A game from most of these actors, and that has to go back to the director, and I felt like in Smithereens, you're getting a lot of flat performances. And as I said, I feel like Rosanna Arquette, I like her better in After Hours. Madonna gets good reviews in this movie. I felt like it was a one-note performance. I wanted a little more life to kind of understand why everyone is so enraptured with her. And, like I said, the boys really are just playing one note at a time.
Yeah, I mean, I thought all the performances in this movie were perfectly good. I mean, Madonna is not a great actor in general. And I think what works here is that she's basically playing Madonna. She's playing Madonna before she was famous. You know, she's her own fashion sense and her own kind of breezing through the scene. And maybe she's coasting on her charisma, but being Madonna to me was enough to understand why the characters would be obsessed with her. I like Rosanna Arquette a lot in this movie. I think she makes Roberta into a really likable character, someone who maybe does dumb things and you could find her annoying, but she gives her a charm that you need for that character. I thought Aidan Quinn was good as the love interest. I rooted for them to get together. And all the small parts, you know, part of casting all those scenesters is that there's really distinctive looking and acting people in these roles where even if they just show up for 30 seconds or whatever and have two lines.
I like all the scenesters. I just wish there, like, you know, knowing what John Laurie can do, I wish he had more to do in this movie, but that's just something I would want. John Turturro, again, we all love John Turturro, but it's one beat over and over again. And that's okay because that's that character. But if you add that up with every single character, it becomes a little monotonous.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that it's monotonous, not to me in the characters, but just in the story. That especially as it got toward the end, and having seen it before, I was like, okay, when does this wrap up? Let's get to it. And if it had been tightened a bit, I certainly would have appreciated it more. The energy when it's more madcap, I think I enjoyed, and I do like that finale, which maybe it's a stretch to compare it to the Marx Brothers, but where all the characters come together in the one place and they're all still confused about who is who, and there's a magic show going on and there's a gangster trying to kill somebody, and like it's all, you know, crazy. That I think is maybe a tone that could have helped the rest of it.
I mean, obviously it is a takeoff of the Marx Brothers at Night at Danceteria.
If only we could have gotten the Marx Brothers to team up with I guess Groucho Marx?
I think he died in the late 70s.
Yeah, the 70s, yeah.
No, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I know you're a big fan of Swept Away. That's your favorite Madonna movie right there. But
I have not seen that one.
I just, sometimes you see a singer move over to acting, and like, I just feel like I needed more. She's got so much charisma as a performer, as a musician, and she's beautiful and has her own fashion sense. But the line readings felt very flat to me.
I mean, I think part of it is that Susan is meant to be this sort of aloof figure, and they talk about that a lot, right? Jim, her on again, off again boyfriend who places the desperately seeking Susan ad in the personals, he is always trying to reach her and never really is able to. So I think part of that was meant to be a character trait, that she's just chill and above it all or whatever. Even when there's guys trying to potentially kill her or whatever, she's just like, hey, calm down. It's all good. Let's dance. So I was okay with that. It's interesting also to read reviews or see people talk about this, given that it was her debut. Like, oh, what a promising debut for this pop star. And she is not a good actor. I'm with you on that in an overall sense. I haven't seen Swept Away, but I have seen other movies that she's been in. And as much as I love her music and I loved seeing her in concert, she's not a good actor. But I think here she's in the right part and she does what she needs to.
Okay. I mean, I would just, again, I would say watch Melanie Griffith in Something Wild and what she's able to do with a similar part. And I think you see that it would be like, hey, what does Melanie Griffith in concert sound like, right? You're going to go to Madonna there. So I have to judge it based on the merits of film and what I've seen from characters like this.
Yeah, but again, I think Melanie Griffith's, the function of that character in that movie is different. She is the center of the story, and Susan is not, despite being in the title.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, again, it's a murky thing. We've talked about it from a scripting standpoint. Like, you know, you're talking about this idea of like this dude who's in a band, never knows how to track down Susan. So he leaves a message for her in personal classifieds, I guess, throughout the country. Do we, you know?
Yeah, that was unclear to me. And also because early in the movie, Roberta's like, oh yeah, she was they were in Seattle or they were in this city. It's like, how did you know that? You live in New York City. Did you buy papers from other cities? So I was confused.
Right. And Susan is such a mainstay in this New York scene. And so that seemed odd to me. I'm almost like, in my mind, I'm like, it's the 80s. That's something interesting about two people who have to keep connecting without being able to connect. So they use the personals, right? I didn't see Sleepless in Seattle, but don't they do something like that there?
Yeah, I have seen Sleepless in Seattle, and I don't entirely remember.
But I just think there are different ways you could have taken the bones of this and turned it into a better being.
Yeah. No, it's Sleepless in Seattle. It's a radio call-in show. That's what it is. And that's because it's nationwide. That's why they can both, hear what they're saying, even though they live in different cities. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think on the personals aspect could have been explored better. And there's one point where Jim tells Susan, like, I had to place 5 ads in order to just get in touch with you this time or whatever. And so maybe it's that Susan travels to all these other cities and the ads are for when she returns to New York. And maybe they say hope you're back from somewhere, but it was a bit unclear. And I think there could be a whole movie about people making connections via the personals. And we see it later, right? And when Roberta wants to get in touch with Susan, she places a personal ad. When Susan wants to get in touch with Roberta, she places a personal ad. So that is a fun element that maybe could have been explored.
Yeah, and this whole idea of what you're saying, though, is that would undercut the whole Seattle thing of how they ended up in Seattle together. Josh, alternate casting for Susan, Barbara Streisand.
Oof, no.
Melody Griffith, we just mentioned. Ellen Barker, Jennifer Jason Leigh, both probably good choices there, in their own way. Suzanne Vega, I don't think we've ever seen her act, but she is left of center, Josh.
Yes.
And then for Roberta, or actually what they wanted to do as Roberta and Susan is Diane Keaton and Goldie Hawn. That'd have been a totally different movie.
Yeah, but Goldie Hawn definitely has that same kind of energy as the free spirit. I feel like that could have worked. I don't know. They would have had to. It's harder to see Diane Keaton and Goldie Hawn being mistaken for each other.
Right.
I feel like that is one underrated aspect that you can buy, that people think Rosanna Arquette is Susan.
I do think that would have been really. They're both such great comedic actresses, and honestly, I think you could have done it that way or flipped it and had Diane Keaton play Susan and Goldie Hawn play Roberta, just to do some misdirect casting. The only other one I got is Bruce Willis's Dez. I don't know. I mean, I just think there wasn't much to that character.
Yeah, that could have worked. I mean, maybe Bruce Willis, Aidan Quinn, I think is fine here, but maybe Bruce Willis would have had a bit more charisma to bring to a part. And sometimes that's the thing. If you feel like the role is underwritten, an actor can bring some extra dimensions just in the way that they play it. So that might have worked. So, Dave, do you have any thoughts further on the film?
I mean, I agree with you, Josh, about Madonna. I think she's perfectly watchable and charismatic, and even if she's not the best actress in the world, she does great here. It's just the rest of the movie that didn't quite work for me, and I agree with Jason with pretty much everything he was saying over there. I do want to kind of double down on the bad guy, who I think is just every scene with him is just it almost feels like play acting. It's just awful. So,
yeah. And I mean, Will Patton is a good character actor.
He's
who's
great.
been in plenty of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that was almost something where it was how do we get these characters to do these things? Oh, we'll have this criminal guy. And there wasn't really any thought put into who is he and what does he want and how does he accomplish that or whatever. So that is definitely.
Well, since we're talking about the Dave stuff, I loved Thomas Newman's score. Talk about a real 80s timepiece. That thing was awesome.
Good stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, between that and the Madonna songs, which also I did want to shout out my favorite part of the movie is her by the jukebox while her song is playing. I mean, that must have been a very fun moment to direct for the director to be there in that moment shooting that scene.
Yeah, that was what I said my favorite scene is too. So I agree. But Thomas Newman, we talked about him for American Beauty back in the day, but I just think it really captured a timepiece here.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what is great about this movie now is that music, whether it's the score or the Madonna song on the soundtrack, the fashion, all the locations. I mean, I'm sure the majority of these places are gone in New York City, or just the way people lived in those loft apartments or whatever is not the way. I mean, and that's something in Smithereens too, even if the characters are annoying, just the glimpse into the way that that scene existed at the time is kind of fascinating to watch. So I did like that. Dave, I wonder on set, because Into the Groove was like a last minute replacement, I wonder what they were even playing, if there was even a Madonna song at the time.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
I think they were playing Don't Cry for Me, Argentina.
That's interesting that they went into the future and brought that back.
Got a real sad song about Evita Peron in Danceteria.
Yeah, that's where you want to hear that song. So should we rate this out of 5
personal ads?
5 personal ads. That's a good one.
Boom.
Yeah.
It gets 2.5 from me. I just think there's a lot of misses here. I do agree. I think we all agree on what the strengths are of the film, but you feel a little stronger than I do, Josh.
I do, but again, I don't love this movie. I'm going to give it 3 personal ads, which is what I gave it the first time. And I think it has its faults, but it's just a fun time for me. Like, even if it's not brilliant, it's not on my 1985 top 10 list or whatever, it's still just a nice, I can see how this would be like a comfort watch, especially for people who might have seen it when they were younger, in the 80s or something.
Giving your own pick a 3, that sounds like me when I mistake what I'm supposed to pick.
Right. I've still yet to do like you did and pick a movie that I've never seen that I might turn out to hate. But
I also picked one that I turned out to love, so that's okay.
Yeah, you're taking chances, and maybe I'm less bold.
Yeah,
you're the Susan of this dynamic.
You're the Rosanna Arquette, clearly. So.
Clearly, I am. So, Dave, how do you rate this?
Before I do, Josh, would you wait 4 hours to watch this movie again?
No, 4 hours. It was worth, and it was only 2 hours, and it was worth the wait for the Madonna show. No, It would not be worth 4 hour wait for this movie.
I'll go with 2.5. But it was definitely. I'm glad I finally got a chance to watch it.
So we'll come back then and talk about the legacy of Desperately Seeking Susan. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 1985, we are talking about my pick, Desperately Seeking Susan. And we've mentioned the sort of lead up to this for Susan Seidelman, the director who made her indie film Smithereens, and that got her the attention of studio people to make this film. And this was a big hit, but it seemed like she struggled, and maybe part of this is being a female filmmaker in the 1980s, but, struggled to follow this up with something either as popular or as strong. I mean, I think the movie that she made after this that's the most well-known is known for being a giant failure, which is She-Devil with Meryl Streep and Roseanne Barr, which I watched this week and thought was terrible, but has been kind of reassessed. I don't know if it really needs that. So, Dave, you've seen that one too, right?
Oh yeah, that's a great one. That's a fun movie.
It's not fun. It's so belabored, and so I can't stand Meryl Streep doing comedy, as we talked about in I Think Our Death Becomes.
I think belabored is a good word for Susan Seidelman movies, and I'm going to disagree with you because we have talked about female filmmakers like Nancy Savoca, who I think is awesome and should have gotten more opportunities. But I just think that she just didn't connect. This was the one that hit big. And then, like you said, afterwards, she made Cookie with Peter Falk, which I was interested in watching. But
and that's another kind of New York scenester movie. So
yeah, so she had the chances. I mean, I just don't think that the movies connected the way that they needed to for her to kind of hit that next level, as opposed to definitely some other female filmmakers that we talked about who didn't get those chances. The one I would want to see from her is, I think, from 2013. It's called The Hot Flashes, about a bunch of middle-aged women who form a basketball team.
Yeah, I doubt that that's good. And that's actually the last feature that she's directed. She did also do some TV work, including Sex and the City, and Dave, one of your favorites, Stella, directed some episodes of that.
Wow. Real Brooklyn pizza here.
Suddenly Dave is a fan.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, Jason, I think what you're saying is, I think it's both, right? I think maybe it's tough to get those opportunities. And then when she did get those opportunities, maybe she didn't make the best of them. And so it's a mix of that didn't lead her to a bigger career after this.
Writer Leora Barish, the only other credit I found from her is Basic Instinct 2.
Oof, that's unfortunate. So yeah, I don't know much about her. Rosanna Arquette, we've talked about a couple times in Pulp Fiction and Crash. She's had a long career. She's more of a character actor than a lead for the most part, but plenty of work in film and TV, right up to the current moment. She was in The Moment, the Charlie XCX Moment, just fairly recently, and does a lot of indie stuff. I just saw her in a small indie film called Grapefruit, where she plays the main character's mother, and she was really good in that film, which was kind of a decent little indie TV stuff she's done, including Ray Donovan, The L Word, and What About Brian, which is I feel like a very underrated
I know
show.
you like that one. I always remember her in the Van Damme movie Nowhere to Run.
Ooh, I do like Van Damme.
Yeah. I'm surprised Madonna doesn't take her on tour as her opener, because she's a DJ, right?
Oh, all right.
Rosanna Arquette was in the news this week because she kind of reiterated something we said on an Awesome Movie Year episode about Tarantino using the N-word in Pulp Fiction and how unnecessary it was and how it kind of diminishes it just a little bit.
Yeah, and he had a very measured, reasonable response to her criticism, of course.
I didn't hear the response, but hearing your tone, I really do want to hear the response of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, he just tore into her like far, far more harshly than she did to him, and said that she had no class or something like that. Like, come on,
well,
unnecessary. Or I think the hypocritical thing was he was like, oh, you don't want to tear down a fellow artist after he was just in the news for insulting, Paul Dano and Matthew Lillard, and I think even one other actor, right? He was just all in on that.
Rosanna Arquette will be in a movie called Corporate Retreat. A group of corporate executives attend a highly recommended corporate retreat that quickly turns violent and deadly. Ooh.
All right. That sounds good.
Yeah.
So, as we said, Madonna, not a very good actor, but did spend a long time attempting to be an actor. And I think, Jason, I feel like you would agree with me that besides this, probably A League of Her Own.
It's got to be A League of Their Own, which A League of Their Own, which I think is the best thing she's done. That really showcases kind of what she does, like her talents. Dick Tracy, she had those kind of two in the 90s that I always confuse Willem Dafoe and Harvey Keitel for,
Right. Yeah, the erotic thrillers.
Right. And then Truth or Dare, I think, would probably be the one to watch of her documentaries.
Yeah, I've seen Truth or Dare, and that's a great snapshot. I have seen Body of Evidence, which is the erotic thriller with Willem Dafoe, which is not very good. And I just kind of assumed, oh yeah, she acts every now and then, but she actually hasn't had a movie role since 2002. And so she seems to have kind of given up on that. She did briefly move into directing and direct a couple of movies. I have seen W.E. that she directed, which is not very good. But I mean, honestly, she's such an icon musically. Like, who cares if she has a good actor?
Sean Penn cares because they did Shanghai Surprise together when they were a couple. That's who cares, Josh.
Yeah, I feel like her acting career is littered with, Shanghai Surprise, Body of Evidence,
Swept Away. Yeah.
All of these are if we did an Awesome Movie Year season, we would put them in our flop episode.
Right. She is everything you said is right, though, about her as a musician and an influence and an icon and, best-selling female artist of all time. First female performer to get $1 billion from her concerts. Most successful solo artist on the Billboard Hot 100, 44 number one singles. It's just all-timer right there.
Yeah, and even, I guess, Into the Groove just recently had some TikTok trend behind it and had a resurgence and actually re-entered the charts in the UK.
It's so weird how this stuff happens. Like Iris right now, the Goo Goo Dolls song is trending again. It's so strange.
Yeah, is it because that guy was yelling it at a basketball game? I saw that clip.
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Maybe he was yelling it because of the trend. I don't know. I'm behind on these.
The two best actors in this film, Josh, we've talked about John Turturro, who I love, and Laurie Metcalf, who we haven't talked about at all, who's a great actor. And Giancarlo Esposito. Those are the three.
Yeah. And Laurie Metcalf is the one who actually has a substantial part in this movie. And I should have mentioned she plays Roberta's sister-in-law, who's kind of
just trying to latch onto a rich guy.
Right. And I did love the scene where they're having the party in Roberta and her husband's house, and it's this kind of like, nice suburban fancy party, and Laurie Metcalf zeroes in. She's like, "Who's that guy? That's the guy I want," and it's Stephen Wright. I did appreciate that.
Hell yeah,
Stephen Wright, the greatest one-liner comedian of all time. Him and Mitch Hedberg probably have to be. Well, Mitch Hedberg's a little more in the setup, but Stephen Wright for the one-liners, nobody touches him.
Yeah, and I don't know if Stephen Wright was as well known. He might have been just another New York scenester at this time, because he definitely doesn't.
I think he was still in the Boston scene as a comedian at this time. I interviewed him once. It was very low key.
Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, Laurie Metcalf is brilliant. I mean, Roseanne and The Conners on TV, but she's won 2 Tonys. She was nominated for an Oscar for Lady Bird. She just had a cameo in Scream 7. Come on.
You know what she's really good in? Horace and Pete, the Louis C.K. web show and I really liked Somewhere in Queens, the Ray Romano movie.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen either of those, but she has a lot of range. So this was also, as are many movies from this era, I guess, as we just talked about with Clue, adapted into a stage production in 2007, a musical with music by Blondie, which fits the time period and the scene, but seems like it did not go anywhere.
If you look up some of these, like Giancarlo Esposito, I'm really, Breaking Bad kind of brought him back into the forefront and everything. And he's got like 20 projects going at once right now. So that's nice. He should be in everything. John Turturro should be in everything. Laurie Metcalf should be in everything. Like, these are great actors.
Yeah, so many great character actors along with these like artists and scenesters. And I really feel like it creates a nice tapestry.
Yeah, you sure do, Josh.
I do. Do you anything else you want to say about the legacy of this?
Get into the groove. That's the.
We will.
I don't know the next line of it. So.
We're out of the groove now because the episode has ended.
Vogue, 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 Vogue.
Thank you for that and the hand movements. That is Desperately Seeking Susan, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can desperately seek us online.
Yes, media. Please put personal ads out to us at awesomemovieyear.com. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and the Gram. We're at Jason Harris Comedy or J Harris Comedy on all the things. Go for Jason on Letterboxd if you watch this or any one of the other films we cover. Tag it with Awesome Movie Year.
You can find some old things from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And check out our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and come down to Wax Trax Records, where we have an incredible collection of rare Madonna vinyl, CDs, cassettes.
How is your new wave section?
Very good, but Madonna's not in it.
Excellent.
as she shouldn't be. Fair enough. So, Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, we're going to the foreign films. And finally, Josh, we're getting to Akira Kurosawa, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, with one of his great epics. It's Ran.
So tune in next time for Ran, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.